Hi, my name is Niki. This is The Interventionalist, and happy Lesbian Visibility Week, part 2. I did a video yesterday for the first day of Lesbian Visibility Week. It's not actually the first day of the week, but it's the first video out of 3. There's going to be one more. And this is part 2. So yesterday, I talked about sort of the signs I missed as I was growing up that I think were pretty good indicators that I was a lesbian, and sort of the journey to the day that I figured it out, start to finish, starting in like 2nd grade. And that was really helpful for me to unpack. And I thought a good next topic would be the adjusting to coming out and realizing you're a lesbian, and then integration into like living a life as a lesbian, and integration like fully into like the LGBTQ community as a member of it and exploring it and all that comes with it. And I think it'd just be interesting to talk about, because originally I was like, okay, I want to do a video on sort of overcoming, I think, the shame that can often accompany figuring out that you're a lesbian and like using the word and stuff. And I do think that's really important to talk about, but it's not the only thing that you might struggle with after you come out and realize you're a lesbian. Like, there's so much that kind of hits you all at once, I think internally and then also externally. And there's so many different experiences, both like difficult and then also just like overwhelming and confusing and sometimes awkward and funny. And I kind of wanted to talk about all of it. So yeah, before I ramble, I'm just going to get started. So my last video ended and I got to the point where I was like, okay, I accepted that I was a lesbian. I had heard You're So Gay by Katy Perry, talk about it in the video, heard the line, you're so gay, you don't even like boys, had the realization, okay, I'm a lesbian. And then I had to start living it. I was like committed now. I was like, I'm going to be a lesbian. I am a lesbian, but I'm going to like allow myself to live that life. And that didn't happen overnight. Not that I ever went back on whether or not I was a lesbian, but it didn't happen overnight that I felt like it was okay to like fully embody that life and allow others to see it, to claim that I was a lesbian and to allow others to then perceive me as one and see me as one. So even though I had come out and I had told at that point my very best friend, I didn't tell anyone else. And when I would talk to people and like the concept came up of dating, I had like the courage to say that I dated women, but I couldn't get myself to say the word lesbian. Like for a really long time, I could not get myself to say the word lesbian. And unless I was like directly prompted by somebody asking my like label, if I had a label, then I wouldn't say it at all. And I would try and avoid it at all costs, just because using the word lesbian, even though I knew that that was right, felt like it was a big deal. It is a big deal because it's going to change the way that somebody sees you, especially if it's men. It's going to change potentially the way that they treat you the second that they realize they don't have access to that way, and you're not available to them. Like, it was never an option and it's never going to be an option. And you learn pretty quickly, like you figure out pretty quickly that to tell people that you're a lesbian, to like make that claim, you're gonna be met with this like very often, I don't know, it's a very like almost taken aback response. Like, I think it's hard for people to conceptualize that no, like there's no men involved at all. And it happens from other people in general. Like, I've had that experience from women, which I'll talk about, but particularly for men, like they will either be taken aback and they'll start treating you very differently. But the way that in particular I've experienced it is if I told anyone that was a man that I was a lesbian, I would say 98% of the times that I've told a man that was being otherwise nice to me, they got immediately cold. Like immediately. They did not treat me with any warmth after that. Like the second that there was no chance that I would be attracted to them, that I would like potentially be with them, get with them, be interested in them. It was like I had no worth or value if I wasn't even open to having like attraction or relationships with men. Like it was, I can't even explain to you. Like, I think if you've experienced, you'll know what I'm talking about. It was just like shut off immediately. Like this, like taken aback, cold stare, never really engage with you again. Like not even make eye contact with you because you just don't matter. But also, this is with men in particular that I've noticed, cis men. There's like an offense, like an ego offense thing that happens. I think it's that like cis men who are like homophobic and have this egotistical view where they should be the center of everything and they have the right to kind of have access to anyone, and should be desired because the world is formed around like cis men being the desirable, like, what would it be, community. And so when someone outright says, no, like, you're not desirable to me at all, I'm not interested in you at all, and I don't want you like near me at all that way, like I would not engage with you that way, I don't want it. It's, I think, shocking to their system, and they like have this offended, ego-driven response sometimes, and I think that is what also contributes to the coldness. Like when somebody gets their ego hurt, they often become very cold and sort of defensive. Just, it's a very specific kind of response, right? Like when you hurt someone's ego, you can tell that it was a hit to their ego, the way that they're acting. That's kind of what I've noticed, particularly when it comes to men and like cis men. And that was something I learned to deal with. And it was also something that I was aware of. Like I knew before I even really experienced it that's what was going to happen, because I knew that the second and this is sad, but I knew that the second that if I was in any capacity, like had to work with a man, like at work, if they thought that they no longer had any potential access, or any men did, I knew that switch was going to happen. And so I wouldn't tell men that I worked with, that I didn't really have friends like that were men, but I worked with men, like they were in my life because of that, like for jobs and stuff. I wouldn't tell them that I was gay. I would tell the girls that I was around, but I wouldn't tell them. And it wasn't necessarily because I was worried they would hate crime me. I was more so worried about the impact of losing, honestly, the only word I can say is the privilege of them thinking that they have access to me in some way. Because the second that they don't, you sort of lose that privilege, and the privilege is them not treating you like you're worth nothing. Because to be treated in any capacity by a man as though you have worth, like, unfortunately, because of our society being misogynistic and our proximity to men being so tied to our value, it gives you more value and respect to have that proximity to men. And the best way to have proximity to men is to allow them to have access to you, or to let them continue to believe that they do have access to you. Because once they see that they don't, I think even friendship is really not an option. And I didn't want to be friends with men, but the proximity would be completely cut off. And then that ego-driven response would happen, and then they would treat me really coldly, and that would reflect on my worth to other people, and also my self-worth. Because even though I was a lesbian and I had accepted it at that point, so much of my worth is still, I was raised that way, right? And that's what it means culturally in a misogynistic culture. So much of my worth had always been tied to my proximity to men, has been tied to being wanted by men, being an object of a man's affection, all of these different ways in which my worth had been tied to men. And I was also aware that I was treated with almost like more respect, and as though I had higher value if I had proximity to men. Like, people will treat you differently if you have a boyfriend. And it's why not only relationships have social capital, but heterosexual relationships. It's like a power thing. Like, there is a weird power that comes with being able to say, I have a boyfriend. I mentioned this in a video a couple videos ago. I was talking about the video where I talk about getting cheated on with a man. I was talking about my friend who's bisexual. She's had girlfriends, she's had boyfriends, and she was telling me how we were talking about the way that people treat you differently. And she was talking to me about how there was this girl in her friend group, and she was straight. And when my friend had a girlfriend, the girl would love to talk about it because she loved to talk about relationships, such a social bonding topic to talk about relationships. And the girl had a boyfriend, and they're talking about it all the time. And then when she had a boyfriend, my friend, suddenly the girl was not so open to talking about it. And my friend was like, she suddenly got really competitive and like snappy with her. And I think we talked a lot about that, because I think it really speaks to the idea that people aren't threatened when you have a relationship that is lesser than them. And I'm talking about insecure people who are obviously like feeling insecure. But the fact that there was then a competition based on obviously insecurity, like a fight for who is the most like means more and therefore like feels the most secure, apparently, only happened when my friend had a boyfriend. I think really speaks to the way that we see value and worth and like the hierarchy of relationships. And that was something I was aware of, that I was going to lose that worth and value, and I was going to be less than because of that. And so men, even if I wasn't dating them, to stop seeing me as an option already, like I was no longer going to be an option at all to them, also started to sort of dismantle or like lower my worth in terms of like this homophobic culture, this heterosexual this like heterosexist culture. And I was very aware of that. And so I couldn't get myself to tell men that I was a lesbian, but I could tell women. And the only times I would end up telling, I think the first time I told a man that I was a lesbian was maybe like 7 or 8 months after. And it only came after I had been friends with him now. I had been friends with him for like probably like 5 months. I had never used the word she. When I would talk about dating, I would always use they, or I would even just use he because I just didn't want to tell him. But we were working together, and then we started to become really good friends. I was doing acting. I did acting for a while. I mentioned in my last video how like right before I came out, I'm bipolar too, and right before I came out, I was in a hypomanic episode just because I was overwhelmed with everything, like also related to my sexuality, not knowing what to do. And around that time, like I just because I was hypomanic, I decided I'm gonna change my entire career. So I got like really dedicated to acting. I was insane. Like the amount that I did in the time frame that I did is crazy because I was hypomanic. And so I was doing a film with him. And they were really long shoots, and it was filming like for quite a long time. So if you do any kind of like acting, you spend so much time with these people, like on and off set, reshooting scenes, all of this stuff. And we were a couple in the movie, the show, I don't remember what it was. And so we had to kiss one time, and I was horrified. I like begged, this is really unprofessional of me. I like begged the director if we could like switch it so that I didn't have to do it. Oh my God, this is actually really funny. I wonder if I can find this clip because we had to film it a bunch of times over because the first time you tried to kiss me, this was my true visceral reaction. Like I could not help it. I went like this. That's so unprofessional. This is why I'm not meant to be an actor. I was terrible. I was a terrible actor. I don't even know why I thought that I could do that. But we filmed together for like months, and so we were spending so much time together. We had become friends. He had a girlfriend. He would talk to me about his girlfriend. He would try and ask me like, oh, what about you? Like, how's dating? I couldn't get myself to tell him. And then eventually, after like 5 months, he was talking about his girlfriend, and then he was asking me if I was dating, and it like took everything in me. And I was trying to tell the story, and I was like, I should just tell him. But the second I do, like, he's gonna treat me like shit. Like, he's gonna treat me like absolute shit. And we were still working together, I think, at this point. I don't remember. And so we were on the phone, and I was like, well, I do have some dating drama. And I started to tell him, but I kept using they because I was scared. And then he stopped me, and he was like, sorry. He's like, you keep using, he's like, do you date women? Like, you keep using they, you're not saying he. And I was like, kind of better that he just asked because I couldn't get myself to say it. But I remember like feeling sick to my stomach, and like, I was like, I should just say it. And then I was like, yeah, like it's a girl. And he said, oh, he's like, okay. And I don't remember what he said after that. After that, I just felt like so uncomfortable. He was nice. But it was the first time I had told a guy. And it was the first time that I don't know. It was such a specific experience, like having to overcome telling men because it represented something that like is so central to the lesbian experience, which is truly losing your proximity to men that is based in attraction, and there's power to have the proximity of attraction to men. And now you're stating it out loud externally, and now it's going to affect you externally. Even if you've already accepted it internally, coming out to men around me personified that and then caused it to manifest externally. And that meant it was going to have an external impact on me, like them being cold, but that was also going to reflect culturally and like social value and stuff. So I was scared, and that was the first time I was able to do it. And he treated me fine. But then something came up that I think is going to relate to another thing I experienced after I came out, which is the way people don't really take lesbians seriously, which I'll get into. But that was the first time I came out to a man. And so after I came out to him, it kind of snowballed into me being able to come out more to like more people in my life in general. At this point, I had come out to a few of my friends, all women, and I've gone on dates with women. But I was still struggling because I was still trying to hold on to the value and worth that came with people at least thinking that you could be interested in men, or men could be interested in you, that you would have that proximity. I was having a really hard time letting it go for so many different reasons, and I wasn't really ready to face the impact. And I came out to him for the first time, and it went okay. So then I started to come out to other people, and it's interesting because I feel like the first thing people ask you, I think almost every single person at the time of my life, other than like my best friends, I think he asked me this too. I don't remember if he did, but I kind of think he did. One of the first things people started to ask me when I stopped just saying, oh, I was into girls, and I would say I was a lesbian, was, they would ask me if I had sex with a man before. It was like the first thing people would ask me. They would kind of always just go, oh, okay, if they were responding well. Other times, like, they would just respond like kind of homophobically, but if they were responding well, they would still follow it up with like, can I ask you a question? And I'd say, yeah. And they'd say, have you had sex with a man before? And I always felt so uncomfortable because it felt like in that moment, the validity of my sexuality was going to be dependent on my answer. And I had fought so hard to get to the point where I could say that out loud. So like, it doesn't matter what I answered. It was like going to invalidate my sexuality if they were asking it for that reason. So if I said yes, it was going to be like, okay, interesting. So like, are you really gay if you were able to have sex with a man before? But if I said no, it was going to be like, well, how would you even know you haven't had sex with a man? And it puts you in a bind because it's not about your answer mattering. The answer itself doesn't actually matter. It doesn't relate to my sexuality at all. It doesn't matter if I had or had not. It was the fact that externally now, my sexuality was being perceived by others and it was impacting me. So like men, losing my proximity to men by like telling them that I was a lesbian and cutting off that access, that romantic access and proximity, which is a big deal in our culture. And then also being perceived externally by people in terms of whether or not they'll believe it and then validate it. I don't need people to validate my sexuality, but it's really difficult when no one around you like truly just is like, okay, I believe you, like you're a lesbian, unless you fit whatever weird standard they have in their head. But the thing is, it's always inconsistent because like I said, neither of those answers was gonna be enough to be validated. Like I could see both sides of the coin where they were gonna be like, okay, interesting, like are you sure? And it's because I think it's just really hard for people to actually conceptualize that somebody does not have, men are not a part of their sexuality in any capacity. So I think it's just hard for them to actually genuinely conceptualize it. And so in that moment, they have to center men again. And that's how they decide, or I guess it's, how would I word this? They center men in your sexuality because that's the only way that they can understand sexuality is still your proximity to men and your past relationships with men and your current relationships with men, because they see all sexuality still being centered around men. When in reality, my sexuality has nothing to do with my interactions with men. Like, it's not because they were mean to me at any points in time, because men had been nice to me. It's not because I, like hate men, or I've had like good friends that are men that I've loved, like as friends, all these things. It doesn't matter. Men just have literally nothing to do with my sexuality. Nothing about men has anything to do with my sexuality. So when they ask me questions about men when I come out, they're centering men in my sexuality and like what has created the lesbian in me, the lesbianism in me, when nothing about men has contributed to that. It's literally just me. I was born this way. It's fucking in my DNA, okay? I don't know. I'm a lesbian. That's all there is to it, but they can't see that. They like cannot imagine sexuality being truly 100% removed from men. I think a lot of people have like this myth of like the lesbian man hater, which, okay, people will say that, like I'm a lesbian man hater, but in reality, like the problem I think that can be risky about saying is it's starting a conversation that still centers men, as if your sexuality is because you hate men. And it's not. Our sexuality is not because of men or our influence on men. It is truly 100% our own, It sort of removes our subjectivity and our lesbianism as being 100% its own and legitimate and respectable when it's being then again tied to men. And I was witnessing that firsthand. Like, it was like kind of can't escape men. If I come out and I lose my proximity to them, I knew what was going to start happening. I was going to start losing social value and worth, and it was going to affect me. And then I was experiencing people still centering men when talking to me about my sexuality or sex or anything related to sexuality. And then that brought up something else, which is something that I think contributes to a lot when it comes to sex and sexuality. When somebody asks you, have you had sex with a man before, when you come out to them, right? And they're looking for one of two answers. They're reducing you and also the sexuality of lesbianism in general to sex. And that's just so unfair in so many different ways, because sexuality, I understand that the word is within it, sex, but our sexuality is so much more than who we choose to have sex with. And there's so many ways in which that's so exclusive, like excluding people that live within the lesbian community and have a lesbian identity that do not fit their very like what would be the word? Like kind of like gender essentialist ideas, like heterosexual ideas, because they're assuming when they say things like that, they really are just assuming. They're talking about whether or not you've had sex with a cis man. And they're by default kind of assuming that sex and lesbianism is 100% reduced down to, I don't like this word, I don't know why, genitalia. That's what they're asking. They're asking if you've interacted with cis man genitalia. That is what they're asking you. And that's reducing people to their genitalia. And that's not, genitalia does not equal gender, right? That's what's happening in that moment. And that's really exclusionary to people within the lesbian community. Because to be a woman does not equate to having like female genitalia, right? That's what they're doing. They're making those two things mutually exclusive, and that's what they're asking you. But they're also doing something that's important, which is, all right, they're doing something that's also important to mention, that is exclusionary, which is not considering the fact that there are people who are lesbians who are asexual. They don't experience sexual attraction. Sex is not a part of their, like, I don't know, I guess I don't know how I would word that, because I don't know what it is like then to navigate what would be like sexual intimacy within a relationship if you are asexual. I'm sure there's much nuance to that within relationships. I'm saying that because I saw a video of a woman recently, and she was talking about how she's asexual and her husband's allosexual, and they make it work and all this stuff. So I don't know what the relationship is like once you're in a relationship with another individual, and maybe you're allosexual and someone else is asexual. But the point is, no matter what, like, you're reducing somebody's sexuality to their sexual attraction and to who they choose or not choose to have sex with. And that's dehumanizing. Reducing anybody to one thing or an identity to one thing, like purely sexual attraction, is really dehumanizing and unfair and incredibly invalidating. Even though I am someone who is allosexual, it doesn't matter. Like, it's still dehumanizing to have somebody look at me and be like, but that's what really matters in this situation, you know? And it's also dehumanizing then, because if you're asexual, they're dehumanizing you because they're like, well, they don't really see your sexuality as real in general then. Like, it's just, there's a lot of, what would be the word, like phobics in that. And that's difficult because you're put in a position now where you're facing external perception and biased external perception in a culture that values heterosexuality, gender essentialism, genitalia, like, what would that be? Genitalia essentialism, gendered ideas of the body, all these different things, and then reducing you in general to just your physical responses solely, like sexual arousal. There's all these things that people are reducing you to, your sexual experiences, and it sucks, and it's so uncomfortable. And it made me stop for a while coming out to people. When I finally started to, then I started to get that answer, then I kind of stopped again. And I would go back to kind of just saying I like girls. I would tell people I like girls, and I wouldn't really say that I was a lesbian unless it was like fully asked, like if I had a label, which people usually don't ask actually, because I don't want to be asked that question. And sometimes people would follow it up with even weirder things, like someone in my family, I told like someone, I'm not even close with anyone, honestly, anyone in my family. Everyone grew up really, really far away, so I'm not close to really anyone. But I told a cousin that I was gay, and that was her first question, have you had sex with a man? And then she was like, yeah, kissing girls is really fun, so I kind of get it. She's straight. She's married to a man. And it was just so frustrating. Like, the second you come out having your sexuality and your identity reduced to sex and sexual intimacy and like sexual acts and physical intimacy, like, it just is so belittling. And I've had people say to me when they thought they were being an ally, they'd say, I don't care like who you have sex with. My sexuality isn't about sex. Like, okay, like, I understand that like that isn't the word, and sexual attraction is something people experience in romantic relationships, and I do. But it's so dehumanizing and demeaning to a homosexual relationship because you're not seeing it as equal. You don't see it as something as equally emotionally and intellectually fulfilling. Like, you cannot comprehend it, and that's coming through to me in a way that you don't even seem to realize, and you just have to navigate that. Actually, also something else that happened to me has happened to me a few times, which is when I would tell people that I was gay, they would ask me if I was full gay or half gay. And I'm not just saying that those are the words they would use. And this had happened with a couple different people that I wasn't on, like, I wasn't going out with. But it also happened twice on dates, on first dates with girls. The first one was the first girl I ended up kind of seeing, like the first girl I actually like had like, I don't know if I'd use the word situationship. The first girl I like kind of dated, things ended, and then when they ended, I got really uncomfortable and I started quoting the lyrics to All Too Well by Taylor Swift. I'm not even kidding. It was so fucking uncomfortable. Oh my God. I can't even tell you what lyrics was so bad. So whenever I think about her, it just makes me cringe. On our first date, she asked me if I had a label, and I was like, I'm gay. Like, I like girls. And she goes, yeah, but are you full gay or are you half gay? And I was like, I guess I'm full gay. Like, I don't date men. And then she said, good, I only like my girls gay. Which was just frustrating. And that happened again in the fall. I went on a date in the fall, the first date I went on after my breakup, when I was like, maybe I should try and like go on a date. Maybe it'll help. Way too soon, way too early. It was a terrible date. I found out she was on coke the entire night. We ran into her drug dealer. Oh my God. That's like the most crazy date I've been on, honestly. But she asked me, I probably still have the text, actually. I think she texted it to me at one point, asking me if I was full gay or half gay. And I said, I don't remember what I said. I think I said I'm a lesbian. And she said the same thing, that she was like, I only like lesbians or something. She didn't say gay, but she said like, I only like lesbians. And like, it's so frustrating because, again, you're being reduced to like your identity and your label. But in that moment as well, like, I know the answer that you're looking for. Like, when you're asking me that, I know you're looking for me to say lesbian. And not only do I find that to be biphobic, right? Like, it is creating this like hierarchy of expectation, because why else are you saying that? But it put something into perspective for me about being a lesbian that I have realized, and I've talked to some of my other friends about this, my bi friends and my lesbian friends, which is that I think that there is a parallel that comes sometimes with lesbians and straight men. And I think what it is that sometimes people will see lesbians as more whole and straight men as whole, because of the way the culture is. They already see straight men and their sexuality as a whole thing, very settled thing, completely understandable. And then there's lesbians who also have a similarity to straight men, in the sense that they have they have an exclusive sexuality, right? Like, they're like, I'm just for the sapphics, right? Just for the lesbians, I'm just for the other sapphics. I'm not dating men. There's a exclusivity to it, the way that there's an exclusivity to straight men. And I think that exclusivity creates this like sense of security sometimes in people, because you know, or you might feel more secure in the fact that they want you. And I don't even mean in like if somebody is attracted to multiple genders, there's a stigma, right? There's this like biphobic stigma that they'll cheat or they'll be whatever. I don't even mean that. That's not even what I'm talking about, but I do think that also plays a role. But I don't even think it's like the idea that they'll cheat. I think it's more so just the security of knowing like, no, they're fully settled, like they are gay. They really are gay. Because I do think it's hard for people sometimes to truly conceptualize like sexuality in a way that doesn't always end up centering men. And so it can be difficult to navigate sometimes, like navigating through that confusion when you've grown up in a world that fully centers men, seeing how like you could be wanted by someone else who is not a man, and they're not interested in men, so they actually are interested in women, and because it's an exclusive sexuality, it's like, oh yeah, they really are. And I think it makes you sometimes question less whether or not they're into women, not whether or not they'd like cheat on you with a man or anything related to that, just more so that it sounds almost more solid is the word, I think, because it's more straightforward. And I think that can be easier to understand and almost feel more secure in the idea that they know that they're into women and therefore like they're into you, no matter what you identify as, you know? I think that there is this parallel there. And I think that parallel is something that lesbians feel. I do feel that. And I think that's why a lot of lesbians, I think that we experience, many of us, the people who are curious, like bi-curious maybe is the word, come to lesbians a lot of the time. Like they'll kind of flock to lesbians is something that I've noticed and something that I've talked to other lesbians about. And I think that's partially why. Like a stability or a security. I don't know. I think that there's a weird parallel there. But then I think it contributes to the stigma then around bisexual people who are attracted to multiple genders, because it continues to like kind of see them as this middle ground where they're like a little bit less secure of an option in their sapphicness, which isn't true, right? Like, it's not true. It's like sort of creating this, what I would say almost is like a differentiator, a hierarchy in like stability, stableness, and seeing like the middle, essentially, someone who's attracted to multiple genders is maybe less decisive, less stable, when that's not true. It's not true. It's just not true. But I do think I see that exist within the world. And it's something that I've just noticed, and I noticed through the way that people have spoken to me, especially like those two women that I was going on dates with. Okay, also, side note, they were both bisexual. So I thought that was interesting because I don't know. I just think it's interesting. I think it's just interesting, and I think it really is like demonstrating this parallel. And I think this parallel is built on biphobia, like a stigma against people who are attracted to multiple genders, and then also like representative of what I think is a parallel that exists between two exclusive sexualities, which would be lesbianism and heterosexuality. So I don't know, I just noticed that, and that was also uncomfortable for me because, again, my sexuality, the validity of it, or like how much people would want it, was being determined by whether or not, like, I don't know, the very specific aspects of the way I express my sexuality. So it's like my validity as a sapphic individual in general was about to be questioned. Like, it was about to be like called into question if I didn't answer correctly. And I also knew the answer that they were looking for, but it doesn't change the fact that they were looking for an answer rather than just being like, okay, like you are what you are. I trust that and I believe you. That was just weird. It's just uncomfortable. Like, no one questions or has follow-up questions about heterosexuality. Nobody has follow-up questions about how you got to that point, what kind you are, whether or not that's more trustworthy or less trustworthy. Like, they just let you be. But when you come out as a lesbian, or I guess like really sapphic in general, whatever the identity is within the sapphic umbrella, but this is from the perspective of lesbianism, there's questions. People are asking you questions about how you got there and how exactly you practice it, how you practice your sappicness, and you practice it, I don't know, in lesbianism, and whether or not that's the right one for them. And that is just so weird to navigate. I don't know. It was just odd. And I always felt really unsettled by it because it just felt like invalidating. It felt invalidating, and it also made me uncomfortable because then it suddenly like made me think, okay, I get uncomfortable telling people that I'm lesbian because I feel like I'm going to have less worth if I'm a lesbian, because it's like erasing my proximity to men. And then at the same time, like, people wanting me to be a lesbian because suddenly, like, apparently there's more security in it that like people trust more. I don't understand. Like, it's just such a weird moment in time, like a weird feeling. And so that was something I dealt with, like figuring out how to navigate external perceptions and essentially like navigate validating my own sexuality, like feeling 100% validated in my own sexuality outside of external perception, because I was never going to have just like complete external validation from people, not especially in a culture where it's so centered around men, and whether or not people realize it, tend to engage with you in a way that still centers men. A lot of the times I think people, when I tell them that I'm a lesbian, will try and kind of bond with me through talking about how much men suck, but I'm like, I don't want to talk about how much men suck because men don't matter to me, and that's not why I'm a lesbian. It's just like you start to engage with the world from the perspective of a lesbian, and it really puts into perspective for you how much the world centers men and how much your sexuality, even to them, still centers men. So it's really interesting to the experience of decentering men as a lesbian, I think, is very unique and very specific for that reason. And the experience of like people still centering men in your sexuality, despite the fact your sexuality is exclusive, particularly to men. You know, it's very weird. It's a very weird thing to navigate. I don't know. That's okay. So that's one of the things. I wrote down other things I wanted to mention. Let me look at them. Okay, here's another one. People thinking that it will change. I don't even know if they think it's going to change like necessarily to you being straight, but that it'll change to being like open to men again. And I have two examples of this. The guy that I first ever told that I was a lesbian, we stayed friends for a while after that. And he would always talk to me about his girlfriend. And we were honestly good friends. I'm not really friends with men, but I enjoyed his company, actually. And we had worked a lot together at that point, and we were friends. And then one day, he called me. It was actually Halloween of 2021, 1? I don't know. He called me and he was really drunk, and I had answered, and he was really drunk, and he answered the phone, and I could hear like a bunch of people in the background. He was totally wasted. He was like slurring his words, and then he was like, this is terrible. This is terrible. And he was like, I just need to tell you something. Like, I just got in a fight with my girlfriend. I'm in the bathroom, like I'm at a party. And he was like, and I just need to tell you that I have feelings for you. And then I was horrified, and I was like, I'm a lesbian. Like, you know that I'm a lesbian. And he said, it's okay, I'll wait for you. That's crazy. That is I wonder if I still have the text from that, I'll put it on the screen, but I'm not sure that I do. But the next day, because that happened in like the middle of the night, I sent him a really long text being like, I'm a lesbian. That's not going to change. That was incredibly disrespectful, all this stuff. What do you mean I'll wait for you? Is that how you see me? Is like that what you've been thinking? Is that the reason you didn't turn cold towards me? Because you didn't believe that that's real? You didn't think that I was being honest, that is valid, that I couldn't actually be someone who doesn't involve men in my romantic and sex life? Obviously not. And that fucked with my head. Because then the only reason he continued probably to treat me well in any capacity or be nice to me or didn't react badly is because he didn't believe me. And it's because they cannot see sexuality as something that does not include men in some way, shape, or form. You know? They have to, in some way, shape, or form, include men in your sexuality. And when they can't include them in your sexuality, necessarily like you're dating them or like you're being intimate with them in any ways, they center them in your sexuality by like making it how much you don't like them. You know, they always center it around men. And he centered it back to like including men in your attraction. And I'm like, that was terrible. That made me so angry, and it really put a lot into perspective for me about the way people are treating me and whether or not they even believe me. And that happened again recently, actually. And I play sports. And I was at a volleyball tournament, and there's a few girls on the team and a few guys, and one of the guys told one of my friends, she's also in the LGBTQ community. She's straight, but she's trans. And he started asking her about me, and then he asked if I was seeing anyone, and she was like, oh, she's a lesbian, like she's only for the girls. And then he said, oh, okay. She was telling me this. So this is what she told me he said. She told me that he said like, okay, should I still go for it? Like, I know things can change sometimes. That was recently. That was like within the past couple weeks. Like, no. No, why? And now like we're on a team for the rest of the day, like theoretically longer, but I don't want to play with you anymore. And I know that you said that. And like, not only is it like kind of frustrating already that like we're supposed to be playing on a team, like it really you had to make it like about this. Like I wasn't even really talking to you. That was annoying to me. But then her telling me that he said that like really bothered me. I was so bothered by it because what do you mean? Like, is that not answer enough for you that I am a lesbian? Like, no, you don't believe me. You think it's going to change, which means you don't think it's real now. It's real. I don't like men. I swear. I swear on my life, actually. Like, I may not be religious, but I swear. Oh my God, it's so frustrating. I was so frustrated in that moment. Like, oh my God, I was so bothered. And I was like telling my friend how just fucking bothered I was because it was whatever. It still bothers me to think about. And like the way that I don't keep men. I really have like no men in my life, like truly. I don't interact with men, but it's not necessarily because I'm not someone who would be like, I hate all men really. So much as I just like, they're not in my life. Like I don't hang out with cis men at all. I just don't. I'm not attracted to them, so I don't date them. They're not someone I even think about because I don't date them. I don't read really anything that like includes men in it, like heterosexually. I don't have, the only men that are like consistently in my life is like my father and my brother, and I don't even really talk to them that much. So like I don't really keep men in my life in any capacity, and yet somehow it always comes back to men. Meanwhile, like I'm not even anywhere near them. I'm not even around them. I don't keep them in my life. It's just so frustrating that no matter who you are, what you do, no matter how far removed I am from men, like it always comes back to centering them in some way or believing that they are going to be centered in my life in some capacity or another. It's so frustrating. And it's like, I don't want to have to, I'm not going to prove myself to you. Like I'm not, and I also can't. That's the other thing. It's like, you can feel like you need to prove your sexuality, and that can lead, in my opinion, to hypersexuality. This is also something I mentioned in a video. But also there is never going to be something that can prove your sexuality, because your sexuality just is. It's just who you are. It's just what you know. That's all. That's it. It's internal, right? Like, it is yours and yours alone. And that is the deciding factor, not what you choose to do externally, like potentially be sexually intimate with somebody. But I think it puts you in a position where it's like you have to feel like you have to prove your sexuality. And I've talked about this before, but I think it can like make you feel like you have to like solidify the fact that you're gay, you're truly gay, now you have to do the gay acts. And I think in a culture that really centers sex, this is a word that I've talked about quite a few times in videos now, but compulsory sexuality. I got that word right. If you've watched my videos, you know that I can never get that word right, but I said it. I've been practicing. Anyways, in a world that's like centers sex so much, that's a term that came from a book I was reading called Sexual Consent by Melina Popova. It was coined by a sexual activist in a culture that centers sex so much. Then also being gay, the validity of your sexuality can become proved through sexual intimacy. And so it can push you to put yourself in sexual situations that you might not even want. You might not be an allosexual lesbian, or to continue to put yourself in ones that you might not even actually really want or be ready for, just to be like, no, I'm solidifying this. I'm gay. I'm going to do gay things. Like, I need to do this, right? Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Just because you're allosexual and lesbian doesn't mean you're always ready to have sex the second you come out, or in general, you know, you never have to feel like you're ready. But our culture centers sex so much, and like they really make it into something that has this like esteem. Like, it is sort of a checkpoint in your life about whether or not you're like turning into sort of a valid sexual being, I guess, person in a relationship, because our culture centers romance also. So and I also a lot of times make the two mutually exclusive, which is a problem, obviously, when it's like they turn romance into something that has to include sex. Like, that becomes the differentiator between platonic and romantic in our culture. They can't imagine a relationship that doesn't include sex. So it's like, to solidify yourself as like a romantic partner and potentially a sexual one, you have to have sexual intimacy when you're romantic with somebody. And so when you're a lesbian and you're already in a relationship that isn't centering men, and you feel like you need to validate your sexuality, it can contribute to, I feel like, making yourself think you need to have it. And then also the pressure to just have sex in general because of the kind of culture we're in. And so it becomes like a coming of age thing that both anyone experiences, like a straight woman would experience as well as a lesbian woman. We both have an expectation to have sex as a sort of coming of age, as a checkpoint in our lives. But there's the addition of all that comes with being a lesbian that can affect the way that you perceive sex and what it means to you and the value it adds to you in a relationship that isn't centering men. It adds all this other stuff you have to, like, I don't know, work through. And I think it can make you feel like hypersexual. And that was something I experienced after I came out. I felt like one of the things I had to do was be sexually intimate with a woman, like, right away, to like make sure I had that almost as like backing, because people ask that. They obviously want to know your sexual history, and I was getting like overwhelmed with it, even though I know that that is not a validator or a determinator for your sexuality. It didn't stop it from impacting me and making me anxious and just trying to adjust everything. And so because people had turned my sexuality into like reducing it to sexual intimacy, like asking, have you had sex with a man? It felt like the only way to validate then would be to have sex with a woman. And so I like really put a lot of pressure on myself. And I ended up having like being with a woman for the first time definitely before I was ready. Like, I don't regret it, but I wasn't ready. And I pushed myself in a way that made me not feel well. And it kind of messed with my relationship to sex. And it's because I was affected by the reductionism that was happening related to my sexuality. And I acted then in a way that was affected by that. And therefore it affected me. Yeah. It didn't make me hypersexual. I think it can contribute to like feelings of hypersexuality. It didn't cause that, but it still pushed me to like sort of sexually coerce myself in order to feel like I was doing the right thing to prove myself to others. And thus almost like I needed to prove myself to myself. Like, I have to do the gay thing. Because everyone was centering sexuality around whether or not you've been sexually intimate with someone, a man or a woman. So that was something else that I struggled with. Oh gosh. this is more than I thought I would even think about. Let me see what else I wrote. Hold on. Okay, I do have so many other notes that I took about like the experience of coming out that I would like to talk about, but they're definitely not. Probably like this video is already going to be way too long. I do want to share one more moment that came to like me getting used to the word lesbian, which eventually I did, and now I love the word lesbian. I really struggled to use it before. And there was a moment in time where I was seeing this girl, and this was after coming out. This was like 2 years after coming out, a year and a half after coming out. And we were talking about sexuality, and she was saying how she identifies as fluid. She doesn't like identify with any kind of label. And I was like, okay. She asked me if I used a label, and I had at that point been using lesbian consistently. Like I had like been using it consistently, at least with the people closest to me, and I also already knew that was true. And the people I dated at that point, like I'd usually tell them that I was a lesbian, not just like that I like girls. And in that moment, we were in my car, and suddenly I like faltered. I couldn't get myself to say that I was a lesbian. I was like, I said, this is what I ended up saying. I said, I think that, well, I think I like relate to the term lesbian more, but I don't know, like maybe I'd be like, I started trying to justify or like explain away, like maybe I could be with men, like maybe like as if I was going to lose worth if I didn't open myself up to that or be someone that like could have access to men. I think part of it is like, right, the proximity to men gives you worth, even if it's with another sapphic individual, like having that internalized that they're still gonna see your worth in relation to whether or not you can have relationships with men. I was projecting that. And then also just like still being uncomfortable with the word lesbian because of the impact it has once it's like externally out in the world for you. And so I was like kind of trying to take it back, and then she stopped me. She was really sweet. She stopped me and she was like, it's fine, like the word lesbian is a great word, that's if that's what fits you, because she could tell I was like stuttering. And then we just moved on, but I'll never forget that. And I'm thankful for her for that reason, because she definitely picked up on it, and she was really reassuring without having to say directly, like, not like calling it out directly. And I appreciated that. But I think that was the last time actually that I struggled to say the word lesbian. I think after that, since then, I've been able to say it like pretty consistently. Unless I feel like it's going to put me in a position that's like dangerous, like say I'm a lesbian, like men have no proximity to me, with really scary men, like that's not something you want to say. So in situations that weren't that, I think I pretty much always said lesbian now. I feel really comfortable with it now. I really love it. I love the term lesbian. It's always felt like mine, you know? And even though it didn't always feel like great, because I struggled with accepting that that was the reality, that it is just like lives in me, like that is the word that like sort of just lives inside of me, that I live in. You know, it kind of feels like a home, and sometimes being at home sucks. Like I don't know, you wish you could be somewhere else because it just like feels shitty, and dealing with all of the external ways that you're being perceived after coming out could made me struggle with being in that home and like knowing that still this is always going to be home. But now I love the little home. And it is always going to be home, and I love that, and it's comforting. And it took a while to get there, and I had some good experiences and some bad ones and some weird ones. And at the end of the day, like all of those experiences are ones that when I look back now, like I do look back fondly, because it led me to the point now where I love it so much, and like coming out has allowed me the opportunity to meet and love so many other people in so many different ways, like not just romantically that I didn't get to before, right? Because I wasn't allowing myself to explore relationships with people that I would actually be attracted to, but also fully coming out and embracing my lesbianism and my sexuality and just claiming it so it can exist externally outside of me. I was able to find other people who relate, because now it was like something that lived outside of me and people could relate to and see about me. And therefore I could find other people like me. And so I found people that I've connected to in ways that I never knew I could, like found connections that I never knew I could have, cared about friends, and meet such wonderful other people just in the LGBTQ community in general that I wouldn't have been able to do if I kept myself in the closet or afraid of using the word lesbian. I probably wouldn't have connected with the lesbians that I have, that have changed my life in so many of the most amazing ways. If I hadn't been able to get myself to come out, if I wasn't able to work through that or find a way to, I wouldn't have been able to connect with all of the people within this umbrella, this wonderful LGBTQ umbrella in general, and that has changed my life, all of the connection that lives within that. So I'm so grateful and so thankful, and I'm thankful to be out. I'm so, so thankful, no matter like what experiences happen along the way or the hardships that come now or that have come before because of this. Like at the end of the day, I'm so, so grateful and so thankful that I'm in a position where I'm able to live my life as a lesbian. It will make me cry if I think about it. Okay, now I'm actually feeling a little bit emotional. It just means so much to me. I'm really happy. I'm just very grateful. It's such a privilege to be in a position to be able to like be out, you know, in whatever way. So I'm very thankful. Oh my God, I'm actually feeling really emotional. Okay, talking about being a lesbian always makes me a little bit emotional, but I really only get emotional about it because I feel so thankful for it. It really was. So much of my life didn't make any sense, and I thought there was never a place for me, or a place for me to experience the things I wish so bad to experience that others did, and there is a place, and it is lesbianism. So I'm very thankful. That's why I have my lesbian flag that I always get comments about needing to iron, which, guys, I don't know how to do that. It's on the wall. I nailed it. So I don't know. Anyways, that's why I have my lesbian flag, my unironed lesbian flag, that maybe I'll iron one day. But okay, yeah, it makes me happy. I'm happy thinking about being a lesbian, and I'm happy thinking about the fact that I'm just so lucky to be part of such a wonderful community, that I've met so many people that I just wouldn't have gotten to connect to, all of the wonderful people within the LGBTQ plus community. So, okay, I'll get emotional. That's it. I'm going to end it here. So, yeah, if you're gay, if you want to talk about your experiences being a lesbian, your experiences coming to terms with being a lesbian, after you came out, maybe things you're struggling with coming to terms with being a lesbian, the things that impact you, maybe the things that you're really grateful for. If you're having a hard time right now, it might help to maybe say some of the things that have made you really happy about it. If there's anything that you want to share, and maybe not just if you're a lesbian, but any kind of sapphic in general to celebrate, I think, sapphic love on this Lesbian Visibility Day, I would love to hear it. Truly, I would love to hear it. If you feel comfortable leaving a comment, I'm sure so many other people would also love to hear it. I know that they would. One of the messages I get the most often when I get a message is how people feel so seen, reading the comments in particular. So just know, if you ever leave a comment, that you have impacted other people as well as me. So you should know that. If you feel safe or comfortable doing that, I'd love to hear it. And if there's something you want to talk about, but you don't feel comfortable talking about it publicly, I have a submissions page on my website, or you can send me an email. It's all down below. Maybe something longer. Always feel free to send it to me. I'd be honored to read it, to hear it. If it's a topic, maybe a conversation you'd like to open up, I can talk about it here. If you just like want to send me something that you think would be a good conversation, and maybe I can bring it into a video and like open it up so we can continue having it. Or if there's just things you maybe want to vent about, anything, like my email and inboxes are always open. And yeah, I guess that's it. I have a Patreon. The videos are free. They're more mature, explicit, things that I do not think are appropriate to have on a platform where a 13-year-old could potentially find my videos. But they're over there. They're mostly related to topics around sex, queer sex, based in research if you're interested, but they're free. And yeah. Okay. So day 2 of Lesbian Visibility Week is now complete, and I hope you've had a good Lesbian Visibility Week so far. And there will be a 3rd video, the final of Lesbian Visibility Week, tomorrow, and I'm excited for that one. So, okay, yeah. Thank you for watching, for listening to me ramble about lesbianism. Thank you so much for engaging with this and for sharing your own experiences being in the LGBTQ community, because it does make me emotional, and I feel very thankful to get to hear other people's experiences, no matter what they are. And I don't want to get emotional. So thank you. If you've done that or you continue to do it, it impacts me in the most wonderful way possible. So I'm very grateful. And yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I hope you have a good rest of your day, and it's very sapphic and very lesbian. Okay. Bye.